You know, it's fascinating how something totally new can just feel old. In a good way, I mean,
Mhm.
especially with watches. There's just something about a timepiece that hints at, well, a history, a story.
Absolutely. That connection to the past.
Exactly. And today we're doing a deep dive into a watch that really embodies that, the Angelus Chronographe Télémètre. We've been digging into a review of this new piece.
It's quite something.
It is. And our mission today is to figure out what makes it tick, beyond just looking really, really good.
Okay.
So let's get into it.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is how Angelus is deliberately mining its own history here.
Right.
This is part of their La Fabrique collection.
Mm-hmm.
And that name, La Fabrique, it basically means the factory or the workshop.
Oh.
So they're really going back to their roots as major chronograph makers. And this specific watch, it pulls heavily from their pilot chronographs from the, say, 1940s, 1950s.
So it's very much an intentional move, not just a vague vintage vibe. And the review mentioned 3 different versions.
That's right. 3 distinct looks. You've got 2 in stainless steel. One has this quite warm rose bronze dial, gives it a nice nostalgic feel.
Hmm.
The other steel one has a titanium gray dial, which feels a bit more modern, maybe minimalist.
Okay.
And then there's the 18-karat yellow gold version. That one has a white dial, but it's done in a way that really looks like old enamel. Very classic, very elegant.
And the production numbers are tiny, aren't they?
Extremely limited. Just 25 for each of the steel models.
Wow.
And only 15 in gold.
So definitely not mass market. They're targeting a specific kind of buyer.
Exactly. Collectors, enthusiasts who value that rarity, that exclusivity.
You know, what really caught my eye was the size 37 millimeters. That feels quite small for a modern watch, especially a chronograph.
It does now, yeah. But that's entirely the point. It's fundamental to that vintage inspiration.
Right.
Mid-century, 37 millimeter wasn't unusual at all for a chrono, and it's actually the smallest watch Angelus makes right now.
So a very deliberate choice.
Oh, absolutely. It signals they're tapping into that growing interest in more traditional sizes. People are moving away from the huge dinner plate watches sometimes.
And it's thin too, right? The review said 9.25 millimeter. That seems remarkably slim for a chronograph.
It really is.
Yeah.
Getting a mechanical chronograph that thin takes some serious work inside.
Yeah, bet.
And that slimness, it changes how it feels on the wrist, makes it much more refined, less like a bulky tool watch, which some modern chronos can be.
The review also mentions some specific design touches that scream vintage, the faceted lugs, that boxy crystal.
Yeah, those are key details. The sharply cut facets on the lugs add a little complexity, a bit of elegance. And the box-shaped sapphire crystal, it doesn't just look vintage, it sort of bends the light differently around the edges compared to a flat one. Little things, but they add up to create that historical feel.
And then there's the pusher, just one built into the crown. You don't see that often these days.
No, you really don't. That's the monopusher or single pusher design. Very common in early tool watches. It means you start, stop, and reset the chronograph, all with that one button.
Simpler case, I suppose.
Exactly. And it gives a different feel when you use it compared to the two-pusher layout we mostly see now. It's a very direct link to chronograph history.
But even with all that vintage outside, you can still see the modern movement through the back.
You can, yeah. Transparent case back. It's a nice contrast, actually.
Best of both worlds.
Sort of. You get the vintage aesthetic, but you can also admire the modern mechanics and finishing inside. It bridges the gap nicely.
Let's talk about the dial then. The review mentioned different textures and that telemeter scale. What's the thinking behind including a telemeter today? Is it just nostalgia?
That's a good question. I think it's partly nostalgia, partly about telling the story of the chronograph.
Okay.
So the dial, yeah, it has this subtle graining in the middle. Then around that, there's a satin brushed flange, and that's where the telemeter scale sits, graduated in kilometers.
For measuring distance using sound, like lightning and thunder.
Exactly that. You time the difference between seeing the flash and hearing the bang. Now, realistically, is anyone doing that with this watch today? Probably not often.
Right.
But having it there, it's a visual cue. It reminds you that chronographs started as functional instruments, as tools. Maybe it adds a bit of historical romance for the owner.
So it's part of the narrative. The review also mentioned a separate minutes track and snailed subdials.
Yes, the minutes and seconds track is very crisp, very clear, and it's separated from the main dial area by this polished sort of concave ring. Adds a bit of depth. And the subdial's the 30-minute counter at 3 o'clock. And the running seconds at 9, they have that circular snail pattern. It gives nice texture. It creates good visual balance, symmetrical.
Keeps it from looking too busy.
Exactly. Angelus did a good job balancing all those elements.
And the different dial colors we mentioned earlier, they create quite different moods, don't they?
They really do. That titanium gray is very clean, very modern looking.
Yeah.
The rose bronze just feels warm, nostalgic. Perfect fit for the vintage theme.
Right.
And the white nickel on the gold model, it really does capture that elegance of an old enamel dial. Plus, you have applied numerals and markers, nice leaf-shaped hands. It all works together. That vintage modern mix.
It sounds like they managed to make the centrally positioned subdials work aesthetically, which can sometimes be tricky depending on the movement.
That's a really important point. The movement layout dictates where those subdials go,
Yes.
right? But Angelus has clearly thought hard about the design around them, the scales, the rings, the proportions, to make sure the whole dial feels balanced and looks good. It shows real design skill.
Okay, let's get to the heart of it, the movement. Caliber A5000, hand-wound. And the review hinted it has quite a backstory.
Oh, it definitely does. This is where it gets really interesting for watch nerds.
Ah, okay.
So yes, it's designed and made by La Jouperay, which is Angelus's sister company.
Okay.
But its origins go way back, late 1980s, to a company called THA, Technique Horlogère Appliquée. And the people involved with THA, well, they became giants of independent watchmaking. We're talking François Polchin,
Wow.
Denis Flageolet of de Bethune, Vianney Halter.
Seriously? So this movement has DNA from those guys?
In a way, yes. The design originates from that circle, from that pivotal time in watchmaking when there was this push towards innovation and traditional craft. So it's not just a movement. It's carrying a piece of that history, that philosophy.
That adds a whole other dimension. So it wasn't originally an Angelus movement or even a La Jouperay one.
Correct. Its first major outing was as the Cartier Caliber 045 MC.
Oh.
It powered the very famous Cartier Tortue Monopusher back in 1999.
I remember that watch.
Yeah. Later, the rights to make the movement went to another company, Jacquet SA, which then became La Jouperay. So this incredible movement design, conceived by these future legends, has sort of found a new home, a new life inside this Angelus.
That's an amazing journey for a watch movement. And the review said its size and the monopusher function are perfect for this watch.
Absolutely perfect. The single pusher mechanism just fits the historical vibe, you know?
Yeah.
And it's quite thin, only 4.2 millimeters thick. That's what allows the whole watch case to be so slim. It's a really elegant pairing of the mechanics and the overall design.
And technically what's going on inside? Column wheel.
Yes, it uses a column wheel for controlling the chronograph functions. That's generally seen as a sign of a higher quality, smoother chronograph.
Okay.
And it uses an oscillating pinion to engage the chronograph. Basically, think of it as a little clutch gear that swings in to connect the chronoseconds hand to the movement's going train.
Right.
It's clever, relatively simple, helps keep things thin. And incredibly, that system was patented by Edouard Hoyer way back in 1887.
Wow, that old.
Yeah. So history upon history there. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour standard beat rate and gives you about 42 hours of power reserve.
And the finishing sounds top-notch from the review.
Oh, absolutely. They haven't skimped there. You get this lovely 3N gold finish on the bridges and main plate, decorated with Geneva stripes and circular graining.
Nice.
The chronograph parts are palladium plated, which gives nice visual contrast. And all the details, chamfered edges, polished screws, you can see the wheels working. It's beautifully done. Proper artisanal finishing.
Okay, nearly there. Straps and price. Sounds like they completed the picture nicely.
They did. Each version gets a calfskin strap chosen to match the dial. So like steel blue for the gray dial, sage green for the rose bronze, anthracite gray for the gold model.
Makes sense.
And they all have a pin buckle in the same metal as the case with the Angelus logo engraved. Nice finishing touch.
And the price,
Yeah.
reflecting the movement history, the finishing, the limited numbers, I assume.
Exactly. You're looking at CHF 32,300 for the yellow gold version
Okay.
and CHF 17,900 for either of the steel ones, that's Swiss francs, including VAT. So yeah, it's positioned in that premium category, high-end, limited production, appealing to knowledgeable enthusiasts.
Right. So wrapping this up, the Angelus Chronographe Télémètre isn't just another pretty face, is it? It's this really interesting blend. You've got the vintage looks, the smaller size, but then modern construction, beautiful finishing, and this movement with an incredible kind of hidden history.
That's the core appeal, I think.
Yeah.
It hits all those notes. It's for someone who really appreciates not just the design from a certain era, but also the mechanics, the story behind the movement, the whole context of watchmaking history.
It offers a real connection.
A genuine connection, yeah. Reimagined for today.
It does make you wonder, though, with watches like this gaining traction, these smaller, historically inspired pieces, what other vintage features might start popping up more in modern watches, beyond just size or monopushers? Definitely something to think about.